Well, I just picked up my latest round of prescriptions, and as you might imagine, these things don't come cheaply. And unfortunately, some new data from the AARP suggests that affordability trends are going in the wrong direction.
I think the most alarming finding, at least to us, is how much the difference between brand name drug prices and generic drug prices has grown. More specifically, what we found is that on average, brand name drug prices are more than 18 times as expensive as generic drug prices, which really drives home both the bad behavior in the brand name drug market and how much generic drugs really do help us when we're looking for savings.
Ouch. I knew it was bad, but this kind of price increase just isn't sustainable for a society where most have little to no economic cushion and some have to go without their prescriptions altogether. We've covered this issue for you before, but it's worth talking about again as we figure out how to deal with the problem. So what might be driving these high prices? Well, Lee Purvis, Director of Health Services Research at the AARP, thinks she knows.
Well, I'd say the biggest driver of the difference between the prices is definitely the brand name drug manufacturers. They really do have the freedom to set very high prices and increase them anytime they want, and we really are seeing the effects of that. And another driver is the fact that when you look at the generic drug market, their prices often decrease. So what you really have is kind of two lines separating further and further apart, and that's exactly what we're seeing.
There's some academic research backing her up here. This January, researchers in the journal Health Affairs reported findings from an 8-year set of pricing data that showed brand name drug costs increasing up to 15.1% per year. That's per year. What's more, the researchers found that, quote, the rising cost of brand name drugs were due to existing drug price inflation, end quote. The increase was not because of research and development costs associated with the drugs. And Purvis argues that drug companies aren't enjoying these windfall profits by accident.
Lately, our pay-for-delay agreements, which is when brand name drug manufacturers compensate generic drug manufacturers to keep their competing products off the market for a period of time. Something else is when brand name drug manufacturers don't allow generic drug manufacturers to have access to product samples that they need to get FDA approval. And that type of shenanigan, unfortunately, blocks generic competition entirely because generics can't even get to market. So again, given the importance of generics, those types of activities really are something that should be stopped.
And these concerns haven't fallen on deaf political ears.
There's actually a great deal of activity happening at the federal level. The administration is very invested in making sure that prescription drug prices come down, as are many members of Congress and as is AARP. We actually just launched a new campaign, Stop RX Greed, that is focused on bringing down prescription drug prices.
But criticizing drug companies and federal policies from Washington, D.C. aren't the only ways to solve the problem. State government is very much involved, too. Republican Representative Steve Helms' House Bill 667, which would allow Missourians to buy drugs outside the U.S. at far lower costs in most cases, is inching its way through the House. But we're now just about a month from the end of the regular session, so Helms is looking around to see if he can hook his bill to similar legislation moving through the Senate.
I've got a list here of about 5 Senate bills that would be possible vehicles. Not that I would probably amend all of them on there, but there's about 5 Senate bills that are in the same chapter or title area that I could amend my bill onto 667.
Meanwhile, state Democrats have other approaches, including a state review of drug costs billed to Medicaid. House Minority Leader Crystal Quaid.
We really haven't, unfortunately, seen much discussion around prescription drug costs. You know, everyone knows that this is a problem, but in terms of movement on any specific legislation, we're really not seeing anything. We also haven't seen a whole lot introduced, to be honest with you. Senator Lauren Arthur has a bill, Senate Bill 310, that I think is a really good starting point for this conversation, which essentially, it does multiple things, but it creates a task force that will get updates on drug costs and comparisons, and then this task force would be able to make recommendations on payment. That bill I don't believe is moving very quickly, but I do think that that is a good conversation starter. You know, we all know this is a problem. We have lots of citizens contacting us saying we can't afford our drug costs, but we don't really have any solid data to say this is what is going on in Missouri right now compared to other states, and then to try to formulate what we want to do.
Then, working against progress are the good old lessons from Schoolhouse Rock about a bill on Capitol Hill. The process of getting bills through the House and Senate in Jeff City isn't fast. And of course, time is running out. Well, while we wait for a political solution to all of this that may never come, what can we do? Well, first, talk to your doctor. See if it's feasible to get a generic version of that brand name drug you've been prescribed. And then shop pharmacies. Pharmacy prices will differ, and websites like GoodRx.com can give you a comparison point for the same drug across pharmacies in your area. Talk to your pharmacist as well. It's possible they have some ideas about affordable generics for those prescriptions. But what if you need that brand name drug? Well, an option would be to talk to the pharmaceutical companies themselves. Many have low-income affordability programs to provide people who can't afford the copay or full price of that prescription brand name drug some kind of affordability plan to get you access to the drugs you need. Won't be easy. Not much is in this life, but with a little persistence, you can bring the cost of these down a bit more than they are today. And we'll be back after this.